Hi there, I hope you're well. In this video, we're going to look at three different methods, three different templates for you to make your own MFT style top with a full grid of holes over it. Haven't started yet. Now I'm going to make an MFT top with each of the three systems that we have here today. That cost versus convenience thing is something that's going to come up fairly regularly, I think. At the most costly end, we've got the UJK Parf Guide System Mark II. A nice system, beautifully engineered and very well presented. And although it's the most expensive, you actually use the least gear. You can actually make an MFT top with nothing but a drill. Moving on to a jig and router system next, we've got the Trend Tool Technology MFT Jig. Again, that's a simple jig and router, phenolic resin template, and then we've got a basic Mrmdf template from RS Cnc Design up in Wrexham. The UJK set was supplied for review by Axminster Tools and Machinery, and the Trend Tool Technology MFT Jig was supplied by Trend themselves. I purchased the RS Pro Cnc Jig myself. Rather than have me blather on about it, I'm going to get cracking on the UJK system to make the first of the three MFT tops that I'll make with these systems, and I'll fill you in on some of the details as we go. The Parf Guide system uses a pair of steel rulers or Parf sticks for the initial layout of the grid of holes, and I'm getting the first one centered and level with the bottom edge of the first of my MFT sized blanks. Then I'm using the drilling guide to drill out a 3mm hole at either end. Then continuing along the ruler, drilling a hole at every 96mm mark. These 3mm holes need to be right through the MDF top, so if you don't have clear air underneath, you might want to use a spoiler board of some kind. With a pin inserted into the corner, I can swing the ruler upright and use the magic of 3-4-5 geometry to make it square, then repeat the drilling process. There's a separate drilling guide with a bigger nubbin underneath for the corners where two rulers overlap. Then we can repeat the process at the other side. And then join the dots at the top to complete the frame. I've spun the top around for easier access. With the top row done, we need to fill in the rest of the grid, and I'm using the column method, but the row method will also work. It's the same number of holes, unfortunately. Alright, so that's our grid of holes complete with a 3mm bit. We now need to enlarge those out to a 20mm bit, and for that we use the provided 20mm bit, very sharp. I should cut myself taking the gunky stuff at the end, off the end of it, so take care. There's a stop so you can set the depth to where you want it, and it'll either align with the pins that we had previously. That's apparently all you need, or there'll be a point where you're trying to drill a hole where there's a hole already, in which case you can use the dogs, which fit very precisely in here as well. And again, no clamping required apparently. So I'm going to crack on with that. We'll see how long it takes. It's not a race, just a question of cracking on with the boring part. With 2 columns of 20mm holes bored out, I've switched to using the aluminium dogs rather than the pins, as they seem easier. And after that, it's just a question of grinding your way through all the holes, 77 of them in a standard MFT top. One thing I did find was that the drill bit was prone to picking up a disc of MDF from the bottom of the hole that stuck to the central spur and needed to be removed before the next cut. It was easy enough to do, but it breaks up your rhythm a little bit, and when you're in the drilling groove, rhythm is everything. So, not too bad. One down. Don't know that extractor's run for that long ever. No problems, no issues at all with the general mechanics of it. The jig worked well. It's accurate, not just with the UJK dogs that came with, but third-party bench dogs as well. If you're anything like me, I loathe proprietariness, and there's no issue at all using other dogs with the UJK system. Everything absolutely square. Safe to say that whilst it is good to have dust collection, it's not overly effective. But, you know, there we are, what do you expect kind of thing. Perhaps it might have been more effective if you went even more slowly. But I think I went slow enough. And yeah, not too bad, all things considered. I'm going to take a quick breather, then we'll come back and do the next one. Alrighty, so next is Trend's MFT Jig. Nice, simple little phenolic resin jig with 10 holes in there, rather than just one at a time. Might be a little bit quicker. It's really quite clever. They've got these kitchen worktop jig style pins on the side, so you can register that off the edge and off both edges. We'll put it in the right place. Unfortunately, those pins only locate for an MFT 3 sized top. That is the current version, to be fair. I'm using the older MFT 1080, which is a little bit bigger, so I can use the bottom row of pins against the edge, but I need to bring the left hand side inboard slightly. In fact, it's pretty much bang on against the edge, so I can clamp that down on both sides and then start cutting the holes. Basically requires a 20mm router bit in your router. I've got the Trend one, and I've got a Trend T12 router as well. You do go straight through, so I've got some spoiler boards on the bench to make sure I don't go through my nice bench. But other than that, we're pretty much good to go. I'm going to clamp this down and crack on, and as before, I'll give you a little bit of chat while I'm working my way through it. The luxury of being able to bore out 10 holes before the jig needs to be moved. Short-lived though, as the little locating dogs take up the lower row, leaving just the top 5 holes available. Only 4 sometimes, but as luxuries go, I'll take it, thank you. Again, there's no magic to this. It's just a question of working your way methodically across the worktop and following the instructions as to where the locating dogs should go. The dust collection is generally very good on this router, but there's inevitably a little bit of debris left in the holes to be vacked out. And once or twice I did get that little disc of MDF stuck on the end of the bit that needed cleaning out. Again, not a big deal, but it does interrupt the flow a little bit. Well, that's altogether a quicker and cleaner process. Again, no issues at all with the squareness in there. The UJK dogs are fitting in very nicely, and the bench dogs ones are as well. No issues there whatsoever. With the speed, with the cleanliness, with the overall quality of the finished product. A little bit of scorching on the inside of some of the holes. Is that me plunging too fast? I don't know. Brand new bit, never been used before today, so, you know, I don't know, maybe. But other than that, no issues whatsoever with it, so very good from Trend. And yeah, interesting. Next one will be, after a quick clean up, will be the CNC Designs MDF template. But first, quick tidy up. And finally, we've got the largest but cheapest jig of the three today. This is the Cnc Pro Jig from CNC Designs, a very simple 12mm Mrmdf jig, which uses simple plastic dogs like the Trend MFT Jig. Like the Trend MFT Jig, it uses a router and a 30mm guide bush, but unlike the Trend that relied on a 20mm bit to do a straight bore, this uses a regular half-inch 12.7mm bit, and you bore the hole out by making a circular motion. That means it's a little bit slower, but it also means that you get the chance to fine-tune the size of the hole a little bit by using the supplied aluminium strip. You can wrap that around the guide bush to make a slightly tighter hole. I did a test cut on this, and indeed the first hole was a little bit looser than I would like. A single turn made it pretty good, and 2 turns of tape made it just that little bit too tight. Remember as well that the main thing that you need to be able to fit in there are the actual plastic dogs. Otherwise, if you make it too tight, you won't be able to actually use the jig at all. CNC Design recommends making your MFT top 12mm oversized and trimming the bottom edge to match the edge of the jig to ensure squareness. But I am 100% absolutely positive about the squareness of these blanks, so I'm just lining up the bottom edge carefully, clamping it down and getting on with the boring business of boring. And yes, those hip movements are mandatory. Thanks for asking. First 2 rows of holes done, and I can take off the jig, flip it over and locate it with the plastic dogs. Clamp it down and we're back in business once again. And again, I've spun the top around for easier access, but the principle is exactly the same. So there we are, 3 MFT tops created from scratch with 3 very different MFT systems, jigs, templates, whatever we want to call them. Who are these systems for? Well, not for me. As I've shown in my previous videos, I've got my own method for making these, and I can knock out an MFT top in around 7 minutes, admittedly, using about £1,000 worth of equipment, so I have no axe to grind with any of these products. As I said at the start though, cost versus convenience is something that you need to look at carefully when you're considering these, and whilst the UJK Parf Guide Mark II is the most expensive at around £200, it's the only system that lets you make a complete top with just a drill. It is slow though, it took around 50 minutes to complete my first top, and messy. Lovely looking product though, if that counts for anything, and it is the only jig that will do alternative hole layouts and half distance holes if that's something that you need. The Trend MFT jig is very much out of the kitchen worktop school of jigs with a little locating pins, and at £100 or so it sits smack in the mid-range of the three that I've looked at today. It's also one of the quickest to use because even though you have a limited number of holes available on the jig, a single plunge with your router is fast and as accurate as your bit is sized. The jig does come with a silver tape to fine-tune your guide bush to the jig if you need it, by the way, and it took me around 15 minutes to make an MFT top. The jig also offers corner radius of 50 and 100mm, as well as a 45-degree corner and a handheld cutout too. And then there's the RS Cnc Pro Jig as well, a simple slab of 12mm Mrmdf that manages an impressive 2 full width rows of holes before the jig needs to be moved. It uses a simple 1/2 inch straight bit and a 30mm guide bush to make the holes, and they can be fine-tuned a little bit with some aluminium tape. At around £45, it's the cheapest jig here, but it produced a finished result absolutely on par with the other systems, and honestly, between the three systems, I'd be happy to use any of them. So if the finished item, the MFT top, is pretty much identical from each of these three systems, your buying decision comes down to something else. And I guess in an ideal world we'd be able to buy something with the aesthetics of the Parf guide system, the workmanlike robustness of the Trend Jig, and the cost and simplicity of the RS Pro. But for now, you pays your money and you make your choice, and I do hope this video has helped you with that decision, whatever it may be. I'm going to call this one done for now. Thanks so much for taking a look, and thank you again to Axminster Tools and Machinery for letting me have hands-on with the Parf guide system, and to Trend Tools and Technology for the Trend MFT/Jig, and there are links in the video description down below to everything that I've used and purchased for this video today. Thank you as always to my amazing channel members whose contributions and conversations really help shape the content of these public facing videos. So if you'd like to be part of that conversation, part of the community, part of the 10-minute workshop team, we'd love to have you on board and taking part. But that's it for this week. Thanks so much for taking a look, and I'll see you in the next one.